You two have chewed me over for the last time.
Well, here we go again. First things first, glad to be back. Thanks so much for 90k, hopefully 100k is coming soon. And I should have plenty of content to make over the next couple of weeks because we're entering the summer movie dump phase, where all the studios release their biggest projects all at the same time. Sorry Hollywood, but you will never be able to recreate the glorious hype that was summer of 23. Oh my gosh, there were so many good movies being released, like take me back. Now 2024 by default was less thrilling, mostly because this masterpiece wasn't coming out, but also it just had a rough start, but did progressively get better as the year went on. And now we're on to 2025, which has been kinda lackluster in the animation field, not gonna lie. I mean, I like Dogman, and The Day the Earth Blew Up was so refreshing, not only because it was hand-drawn, but also because it was genuinely funny and a great time at the theater. And ironically, probably one of my favorite movies this year. But of course, after the industry produces something so lively and sincere, we go right back to more soulless drivel. Now, as far as my thoughts on live-action remakes as a whole, to be real, never been a fan of them. Not even from an objective standpoint, but just from a conceptual standpoint. Not only are they usually always worse than the original work, but the people remaking the movie usually get paid more than the people who made the IP great in the first place. That, and it also is just a slap in the face to animation as a whole, because it's usually built on the idea that the animated version isn't mature and sophisticated enough. That has been debunked repeatedly at this point. And it makes even less sense considering how these movies are still usually mostly CGI. Like we're just going from 100% CGI to 80%. Make it make sense. But despite all of the loopholes, including so many of these movies being bad, we keep drinking the Kool-Aid apparently. The Lion King remake was the highest grossing animated movie for years. Yes, I said it, animated, because it's completely CGI. So basically, it's like printing money for these studios. Why would they ever stop? And I know this is supposed to be more of a How to Train Your Dragon review, but I can't not talk about Lilo and Stitch, that just came out recently. Both original movies made by the same directing team, by the way. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Now, I have never wanted a Lilo and Stitch remake. I think the original movie is perfect the way it is and actually a bit of a timeless classic. It was really rare to get something this quality and legit beautiful from Disney during the early 2000s. And while it didn't make big waves at first when it got released, the fan base for Lilo and mostly Stitch has grown exponentially since then. Disney made $2.6 billion in Stitch merch last year. Yeah, the little guy still has a lot of gas left in him. Too bad this movie isn't gas, more like, well, never mind. Now, to a person who's never watched the original Lilo and Stitch or just hasn't seen it in years, this might seem like a cute but forgettable little diversion. But to a big fan of the original movie, I was baffled by so many of these changes. It was like the creators completely forgot the heart and soul of the original. And no, I don't mind changes in live action remakes, like I don't need this to be the same movie as the OG. But when you make changes, they have to be meaningful and, you know, not terrible, like taking out the Ugly Duckling storyline. Really bad choice. It makes Stitch not only feel way less developed as a character, but also his found family arc feels less satisfying and impactful. He no longer surfs with the fam because he wants to be a part of their ohana, but because he sees a dog surfing and thinks, hey, that looks cool. So much less impactful. Lilo was fine and the young actor playing her is doing a good job, but they took away her bite and more broken side, which was such a big part of why she was so well written and fleshed out as a child protagonist. And they did my girl Nani so dirty, which I honestly found more offensive than Jumba's masterclass in character assassination. Nani was such a great character because she was stressed out and constantly under pressure, but you could tell she still really loved Lilo and wanted the best for her. She was tough and responsible, but also compassionate. I hate to say this, not really, but this version of Nani feels weirdly incompetent sometimes, and even more detached from Lilo. It's like from the very beginning the movie was trying to create a chasm between Lilo and Nani. Instead of Nani being late to pick up Lilo from rehearsals, now it's the actual luau recital that Nani just doesn't attend, and now Lilo feels resentment towards her, which they have to spell out by the way. Their bond just doesn't feel as strong and nuanced as it did in the original, which makes her leaving Lilo in the end feel both mildly believable but also disheartening. And why the heck would Nani need to leave when Hawaii offers some of the best marine biology courses in the nation? It makes it seem like the writers didn't think the original Nani was fleshed out and good enough because her main focus was taking care of her little sister. One thing is for sure, the original Nani would never leave her sister behind. It was the whole theme of the movie. Ohana means family. That means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. I don't care if she has a portal gun, this is still awful. And the changes to Jumba. Well, that's just what happens when you remove the main villain from the movie. Oh yeah, and the editing on this movie was truly horrendous. Awful, awful pacing. Yes, this movie made me very PO'd. and my theater had the nerve to give me a free Lilo and Stitch remake poster? The audacity! Well, I figured How to Train Your Dragon could only be better, and you know what? I was right. Mostly. Once again, a big fan of the original. Same directing team, so of course I love it. Beautiful world building, peak music, and really fleshed out characters. Despite the story and characters seeming really cliche on paper, the movie really knew how to make it feel fresh and new. Funny considering how they changed so much from the original book is based off of. And for any of you wondering why this remake wasn't an adaptation closer to the books, in the words of Hollywood, if it ain't broke, remake it. Why try something new when you can rehash a beloved property, cash in on the devotion of an established fan base, and make $1 billion all the while? So even if a remake is technically quality or even good, making so much money is still sending the wrong message to Hollywood, who as we can see somehow gets more and more creatively bankrupt every year. Now as far as how this movie turned out, it's honestly not bad. Well, of course it's not bad. If you're copying something that's already great, this by default is going to have some level of quality. It's basically a shot-for-shot remake, but still somehow 20 minutes longer than the original, just like Lilo and Stitch. And all they're doing is just extending scenes, sometimes on purpose, other times it's just the way it's filmed. In animation, there's so much more control with the editing and pacing. Not only that, but animated characters can emote and express way more in the same time it takes for a live action character to do the same. Watching this remake really made me realize how tightly written and paced the original movie was. The story flow was great, and everything moved forward at the perfect speed. It's just really not the same feeling watching this movie. Action sequences that seem so fast-paced and lively in the animated version, like the dragon training sequences, feel way more slowed down here because, you know, physics. That's not to say that this remake doesn't have some great sequences, because it does. All of the flying sequences were still really immersive, and I know I'm being nitpicky, but even the test flight scene that is edited to perfection in the original, with the music and animation working in flawless symmetry, here it just doesn't hit the same because they changed the camera angles and editing. Oh yeah, and the music. Like, did we really need to stop the build up to hear some eerie choir music? I get they wanted to try something different, but I don't think it's as effective as the original track, which again is perfect. John Powell's score is still amazing by the way, but even that is just copy and pasting most tracks from the original. But maybe that's the problem. Hollywood just needs to stop trying to remake movies that are practically perfect. It can work for something like Jungle Book, where the original didn't have a ton of substance story-wise, but when you're adapting something like Lilo and Stitch or How to Train Your Dragon, both arguably some of the best animated movies ever made, it's hard to make it feel fresh or better because we already have the best version. I don't think people really care about it being better though. They just want something that feels slightly different or mature, while still being unchanged enough to pacify their nostalgia craving. And I get it, I'm one of the biggest culprits of overindulging in nostalgia, but don't we want this generation's kids to have their own movies and shows to be nostalgic over when they grow up, instead of just ultimately worse versions of what we had? Everything else in this movie is pretty competently done though, and we can thank Dean DeBlois for that. Toothless is obviously still great, though they did seem to lean a little more heavily into his cutesy side this time around, as if he isn't marketable enough. Mason Thames does good as Hiccup, though Jay Baruchel fits Hiccup so perfectly it's not even fair to compare the two. Same with Astrid, who gets slightly more to do here, like Nico does a fine job as her despite a couple of stale line readings.
That's for everything else.
And that's for everything else.
Which is probably the biggest problem I have with this movie. The line readings are just not as good, which makes the comedic timing way less effective. This remake really made me realize just how hilarious the original was, and it's not even a comedy movie really. But I have to give my flowers to my man Gerard Butler. He does an impeccable job reprising his role as Stoic. Dude is definitely not phoning it in at all, and I love that. Nick Frost as Gobber is also good, just again you're not beating Craig Ferguson. That's mostly why I had a hard time judging this movie fairly, because the whole time I was watching it, I just kept thinking about how much better the OG movie delivered a line or paced a scene. To be fair, this movie is practically begging to be compared to the OG. And when there is a new idea like Snot Loud's daddy issues, which was explored pretty well in the show by the way, it just feels like they never really commit to it. And not gonna lie, the live action dragon designs, I'm doing air quotes right now, you guys just can't see it, they were actually pretty good. I thought that they had more of a medieval type of look, and I think that kind of worked well for this adaptation. animation. So this was decent, even good sometimes, but it can't help but feel unnecessary and even sluggish when compared to how high energy and tightly paced the original was. So just watch that instead. Though it doesn't really matter what I think because people will still devour these reheated leftovers up regardless. I mean, they already greenlit a live action sequel before this movie even released. I was like the only person in my friend group who was unimpressed with this movie. Man, I hate being the movie critic friend sometimes. Yeah, given the industry's current trajectory, we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more remakes and sequels and just stuff that isn't original. It's kind of like when I see people praise live action remakes, I'm like, okay, do we want original stuff? Because Hollywood is just going to keep rebooting and remaking and making more sequels and not doing anything new. So yeah, this was fine, but I do want original stuff, so I am going to be like slightly more nitpicky. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate your support. Keep watching. I will have a new video out probably by next week. So yeah, I will see you guys soon. Bye.